I think that there can be a balance between fun and meaning.
I don't know.
I mean, I think that we all walk that line every day, you know, like you could have the happiest morning and the saddest night. To try and make something that's one or the other is almost inauthentic, and we feel like it's possible to make something that communicates any number of things at the same time. And I think that that's what, I mean, my favorite albums do, you know, like if you listen to a lot of Beatles records, there's a lot of songs that, you know, on first listen, they're fun. And then you get into it more and you realize that, you know, there's some weight there, there's some intensity. And I don't know, I've always kind of gravitated towards music like that. I think that it's possible to exist in that space because that's kind of how we walk around every day.
I'm not going to add anything to that.
Anything. I'm as fake as a pop-up ad.
Toning down the songs when we play them this way is actually, we've been enjoying it a lot this time around. I think that there's certain songs on the record that we haven't necessarily figured out how to fit into our live set yet because it's just a kind of a different vibe than what doing them. Yeah. But then making a new record and having more of like a fully realized production on all the songs, when you take them back to the original guitar or piano or whatever it was, it's been feeling like a really more intimate connection to the song in a lot of ways. So it's been really fun for us.
To me, it sort of takes it back to like when Josh would originally show me a song, or I would show him a song, and it's sort of like back in that creative space, you know, by just having it stripped down, which is a lot of fun.
I was a fool to be
The difference between the last record and this record is that I feel like sonically we were just sort of grown up, and part of that is because we got new gear, and part of it is because our friend Ben West, who worked on the last record but mostly just kind of mastered it, he worked with us more in the beginning, and so I think it shows on this one. And I think we also, song-wise, just became a little bit more focused.
And I think that we were a little bit more open to hearing outside perspective, which I think is actually really, really healthy as long as you can feel like you have ownership over your ideas. It's nice to actually hear perspective from people that you trust. So we actually got like a bunch of production notes from Paul Simon on the song Warzone, which was crazy. And actually the funniest part about that is the first comment was you could use more African percussion, which I thought was just amazing.
I just started laughing.
Yeah, it's just so Paul Simon of him to say that.
But what's funny is it wasn't just, there was a million things.
Yeah, there's a million things.
The fact that he like thought through it and listened through it, like, it was just amazing.
When all the rain is pouring down.
When we were doing the national anthem, we were standing on the pitcher's mound, and they announced like all the teams, and the teams are lined up on the baselines, and then they said, "Ladies and gentlemen, your manager of the Detroit Tigers, Jim Leland," and he starts like running out, like right towards us, just and I got kind of emotional because it's like this cool grandpa running towards me, and I thought that he was gonna come give me a hug, and then like right before us, he just like veers off and like gives the A's manager a hug, and then went and lined up. I was like so disappointed and heartbroken. It's like the grandpa I always wanted.
And if they don't hear the door, just knock louder.
When you think of Detroit music, in my head, I still think of like Motown. Even Bob Seger, although every time I think of him, I just think of his butt cheeks because I've seen them. Because he used to come to this recording studio without wearing underwear, and he had like holes in his jeans all the time.
Somehow it turned into that.
Yeah, sorry, I digress. What do you think about that? Because I'd like to hear your take.
If we can even be in a conversation, I feel like Jack White was like the 2000s of Detroit. And if we're in that conversation between 2010 and 2020, I'll be super happy. We don't have to be like the dudes, but yeah, it's hard for me to detach it too, because I think of Detroit, it's always Motown, you know? One of the things coming from Detroit is that confidence, but I think it sort of seeps into the music where when you're being creative and when you're being artistic, I guess it could be music or anything else, but there's sort of like you don't really care what anyone else thinks because there's not quite like a cool scene to sort of fit into. and so you can exist in your own little world in Detroit and do your own thing. And I think that's sort of evident in our music. And part of the reason why it maybe doesn't sound like other Detroit stuff is because there's all sorts of Detroit stuff going on at the same time, like Danny Brown making a really sick hip hop record. All sorts of, we have rap, we have a lot of great techno, so I think the confidence is just that, like, I can do whatever I want, and it's not going to be sort of judged by like a scene collective,
I love Eminem. I think that he seems like a cool dude.
He's one of those guys you just have to respect, though, because he can do like a Lipton iced tea commercial and still come off as like a badass, and I don't understand how that works, like they asked me to do this commercial, but then I'm just gonna like yell at everyone during the whole commercial. It was like a Super Bowl commercial, and he looks cartoony or claymation or something.
Yeah.
I'm like, how does this guy do this, Like, everything he does, he's looked at as like so hard,
Yeah.
And like cool, but he just did a Lipton iced tea commercial. Like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a very pop record. Definitely blurs sonic elements and like really straightforward songwriting, and I think that's possibly what we meant by blending indie and pop.
Yeah, and not to like sound like we're standing on a soapbox or anything, but I mean, there's a lot of really exciting stuff in the pop world right now, but there's also a lot of like really fabricated stuff, and I think it's always been that way, but there used to be more space for stuff that maybe had a little bit more weight, or maybe was a little bit less standard. And I think that if we could be part of a movement towards bringing songs that have a little bit more meaning back into the pop lexicon, that would have been probably the best that we could have ever hoped for out of our career. And so, I guess making a record, you make it, and then it's up to everyone else. It's not yours anymore once it gets released. So it's up to everyone else in the world to determine whether we successfully, helped that or successfully did what we tried to do. But, I feel pretty good about what we did.
Yeah, I think it's very clear we didn't try to go off the deep end and get weirder than It's a Corporate World. We really wanted to focus and try to write just really good pop songs, at least to our ears.
But we're weirder than...
Right, it's kind of hard to not be... It's hard to not be yourself, So it's us, but at the same time, it's, I think it is pop. Hopefully that we can just talk about good music, in the future.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Daniel.
And I'm Josh.
And we're
Dale Earnhardt Jr. And you're watching Baeblemusic.